Jealousy, The Wish by Robert Seidenberg, M.D. Jealousy in Myth and Literature. The literature of our civilization is replete with descriptions of consuming jealousy. In Greek mythology, Hera, or Juno, wife of Zeus and goddess of storm, was known for her intense jealousy and was said to have made life pretty miserable for the highest god, at one time nearly succeeding in shackling him. The Old Testament describes the jealousy in the disturbed King Saul of the incumbent David. And of course, Shakespeare's Othello is a classical study in jealousy. Freud's 3 stages of jealousy. Only recently has jealousy been examined as a clinical study. Freud stated that analytical work had shown that instances of jealousy revealed themselves in 3 layers or stages. These are 1. Competitive or normal jealousy, 2. Projected jealousy, and 3. Delusional jealousy. Normal or competitive jealousy is thought of as being compounded of the grief of losing the loved object and the pain because of the personal wound, originating, however, in the Oedipus or family complex of the first sexual period. Thus, the subject experiences again the loss of the person of the opposite sex to the competitor. An old wound is reopened. Projected jealousy is that type derived from actual unfaithfulness or thoughts of unfaithfulness on the part of the subject which have succumbed to repression. The subject is battling with his own drives of infidelity and salves his own conscience by giving them to the object. The third and most malignant type is delusional jealousy. This is associated with paranoia and, as Freud has stated, is based on repressed homosexuality. Here, as in the projected jealousy, the symptoms have their roots in repressed drives of infidelity, but, unlike projective jealousy, the love object is really the intruder. The now classical Schreiber memoirs analyzed by Freud demonstrated the latent homosexual mechanism as underlying delusional jealousy and paranoia. Recently, Wang has interpreted Iago's actions in Othello as being based on delusional jealousy, with Othello as Iago's secret love and Desdemona as the rival. Jealousy as wish fulfillment. In addition to the above-mentioned concepts, the writer feels that there is still another aspect of jealousy found in certain instances, which has heretofore not received adequate elaboration, although Freud dealt with it in his essay, A Special Type of Object Choice. Briefly, this aspect is explained as the wish and gratification which the mechanism of jealousy itself fulfills. Psychoanalysis has taught us that symptoms like dreams in themselves express and fulfill a wish or a drive. So, with jealousy, immediately the concept of gratification in jealousy is open to criticism in the light of the extreme suffering and grief of the individual involved. And yet the author feels that he has found a definite wish fulfillment and gratification in jealousy explicable on other than a sadomasochistic basis. Playful jealousy in everyday life. We are well aware that in the psychopathology of everyday life, jealousy or feigned suspiciousness often adds spice to the relationship of happily married people in which fidelity has been impeccably observed. In these instances, An is impressed by a certain teasing in which the maid is accused, or they accuse each other, of infidelity. The husband, finishing a particularly tender steak, might say to his wife, "A very good steak. You must be establishing a fine relationship with the butcher." The wife may retort with a pertinent remark about the blonde in the office. Of a more intimate nature are the remarks during coitus. "Am I as good at this as the other people in your life?" These teasing remarks appear to add to, rather than to detract from, the intimacy and degree of gratification of the relationship. They accuse each other because they are sure there is no basis for their accusations. Apparently, a pleasurable purpose is served in jokingly viewing the loved one as a sexual infidel. It adds to sexual excitement and serves as a stimulus in normal living. Here, jealousy and concomitant suspicion are consequently manufactured and enjoyed. Dramatic illustration: The Guardsman. The play The Guardsman, by Franz Molnar, glorified by the Luntz, deals with a jealous husband. Briefly, an actor, married 6 months, is compelled by suspiciousness to test the faithfulness of his wife. The actor explains to his old friend, the critic, that he is certain that his wife is tired of him and is looking for a new interest, a new friend. He proclaims this would be unendurable to him because "I've never really been in love until now. This time it is the last, the greatest, the most torturing love, the love that exhausts my innermost power of feeling the richest in beauty, the richest in pain." In order to test the fidelity of his wife, and to display his acting ability, he disguises himself as a guardsman with the idea, "I will make her love me again." The critic asks the actor what he hopes to get out of this, and he replies, "Either she will yield or she will not. If she does not, then I will be very happy. For I will know that she is true to me. If she does yield, then I will be very unhappy, but at least I will know. But anyway, I will have had one sincere kiss from her." In the ensuing seduction, the guardsman suffers some success, which leads him to remark, "Pity the husband, but congratulate me." The climax comes, of course, when the husband guardsman reveals his identity, but the wife indicates complete intelligence. Yet the husband and the audience are left mumbling, did she or didn't she? This farcical plot brings forth many questions. First, what was the origin of the suspiciousness? After 6 months of seeming pleasureful relations, what provoked the need for the test? Why the disguise? Why is the actor compelled to go into competition with himself, intent on succeeding in his seduction? Here is a manufactured triangle, obviously serving some purpose for the actor. That this purpose is in the nature of gratification is evident in the intensity of the feelings experienced by the actor in the laying and executing of the plan. Psychologically, one is immediately impressed with the idea that this is a manifestation of the Oedipal triangle in which the actor attempts to work out his conflict as an actor might, through drama. One suspects that the guardsman is the son trying to steal mother away from father. The fear that the woman is succumbing to the other man, maybe the wish that mother should do this, the other man being in truth the son himself. The wish is revealed in the test. The mechanism finds its full expression when the actor guardsman says, "Pity the husband, but congratulate me." The son has won out over father. This general idea was pointed out by Freud as the family romance, stating, the lover with whom the mother commits the act of unfaithfulness almost invariably bears the features of the boy himself, or, to be more correct, of the idealized image he forms of himself as brought to equality with his father by growing to manhood. Mythic Ruse, Amphitryon 38. Amphitryon 38 by Jean Giraudoux is a play expressing the same mechanism with the essential elements of the test and the disguise. Jupiter reveals to Mercury his love for Alcmena, the faithful wife of the mortal Amphitryon. Jupiter aspires to win Alcmena, not as he has won so many others in the past, but as a mortal man. He poses the question, faithful to herself or faithful to her husband. You know, Mercury, most faithful wives are unfaithful to their husbands with everything except men with jewels, with perfumes, with reading, with religion and the contemplation of spring, with everything, in fact, except a man. The difficulty with these virtuous wives is not to seduce them, but to persuade them that they may be seduced confidentially. The two gods deduce that the only possible way Jupiter may realize his aspiration with Alcmena is to be her husband, to appear to her as Amphitryon. The two conspirators then descend to Earth, and Mercury arranges a war so that Amphitryon is called to duty. Consequently, Jupiter finally gains entrance to Alcmena's chambers, although she is able to see through the disguise. Again, Jupiter is both triumphant and chagrined by his conquest. In reply to Mercury, Jupiter states, "What do I want? What every man wants. 1,000 contradictory desires. That Alcmena should remain faithful to her husband and also give herself to me. That she should remain chaste under my caresses, and yet that desire should flame up in her under my very sight. That she should know nothing of this intrigue, and yet that she should connive at it with all her might." The play continues in a series of mixed identities and feelings between Jupiter, Amphitryon, and Alcmena, later including Queen Leda. Again, the woman is being tested for faithfulness with quite ambivalent feelings on the part of the disquieted male as to whether he seeks success or failure in his venture. Jupiter's above-quoted speech could easily be that of the sun in the Oedipal situation. Clinical turn, from farce to agony. In the cases of jealousy which we see clinically, the teasing and playfulness are no longer present. The patient is very seriously preoccupied and distressed by the infidelity of the mate. The idea cannot be dispelled by reassurance. All evidence is transformed to suit the concept of unfaithfulness and sexual looseness. The idea has the strength of a delusion. We may speak of these instances as malignant jealousy, but which nevertheless has in its underlying mechanism the same motive as mentioned above in the normal relationship. Now there is no pleasure, but instead agony. Case Study 1. The Tormented Student. A 22-year-old male student presented himself for psychiatric treatment because of extreme depression characterized by frequent crying spells, agitation, and somatic symptoms of anxiety. He related that he had been seeing a young girl with whom he was deeply in love and was debating the issue of marriage. The only obstacle, as he saw it, was the fact that he had knowledge of her previous sexual experiences with other men. This thought tormented him, although he himself had intercourse with her. This jealous thought could not be dispelled by all the broad-mindedness and tolerance that he could muster. He tried to break away from her, but always returned. The fact that she was of a lower economic and social status was not the determining factor. He could not tolerate the idea of her previous sexual promiscuity. Yet his own sexual activities were not of a limited nature. To this point, we might assume that this jealousy was of a projective nature. Yet further exploration revealed another mechanism. As therapy continued, he brought out that he had always been fascinated by loose women, always preferring their company. He would become intrigued by gossip about them and always sought intimate details as related by other boys. In the present instance, he was overtly consumed with jealousy about his girlfriend, yet had to learn from her and from male acquaintances a full inventory of her past sexual experience. He found himself inextricably involved. He could not marry her because of her promiscuity, yet would not leave her. He always came back, as he described it, crying in her lap. The history of this individual revealed that he came of a family of moderate means. There was an older brother with whom he fought continuously. The father was described as quick-tempered, unreasonable, and stubborn, a man who pushed his children to achieve his own end. Mother, on the other hand, was described as an emotional person, basically sentimental. Mother was overprotective and restrictive, always fearful that her children would get hurt. Extremely reserved in her attitude and behavior, she saw danger in everything. The older brother was a first lieutenant in the army. The patient was a seaman first class in the Navy. When the former returned home, the patient seized every opportunity to deride and belittle the older brother, and open fights continued at home. The idea of the woman with clandestine sexual experiences was investigated. The patient revealed fantasies in his early childhood in which he thought of the circumstances of his parents' marriage. They had eloped, an unusual occurrence in a religious family such as theirs. Later, he wondered if his mother had been pregnant so that she had to get married quickly and quietly. The idea of woman being sexually promiscuous had its origin with ideas about mother. Yet, in the beginning, the daydreams about mother were of a pleasant nature. It was only later with the mother substitute that the suffering manifested itself. No longer could the conscience allow pleasure to be experienced with these incestuous thoughts. It is replaced by gloom and despair. Case study 2. The devoted son. A more malignant situation was that of a 54-year-old male who was sent for psychiatric consultation by his wife. Life had become unbearable for them because in the last 4 of their 20 years of marriage, he had successively accused her of infidelity with 3 male acquaintances of theirs. He was quick to notice little gestures that his wife made, and he had thought of many devices to catch her. Through these devices, although he had no concrete evidence, he felt without doubt she was untrue to him. And he was apparently tormented, anxious, and extremely despondent. He felt that life was no longer worth living with the situation as it was. Somatic symptoms appeared with fear of heart trouble, cancer, etc. He felt deep sorrow for his 18-year-old son who would have to live with the embarrassment of an immoral mother. He contrasted his own home life. His mother had the respect of all who knew her. Never had a disparaging remark been made about her. Her character was impeccable. He was a devoted son to his mother. Because of this deep understanding between them, no overt gestures of affection had to be displayed, so he stated. There was another brother with whom the patient has always quarreled, and for the last 5 years, they have not spoken to each other. Father appeared to be quite a passive individual about whom the patient had little to say. At the age of 34, the patient had severe misgivings about marriage, even though he stated he was madly in love with his bride-to-be. He had the feeling that she really did not love him but married him because he was well off financially. Before the marriage took place, he demanded and received a letter from a gynecologist attesting to her virginity. Early in the marriage, suspiciousness of a benign nature began to show itself. He always teased her with, "I know that your heart is somewhere else." Up to this point, we could say that the history as presented might indicate delusional jealousy with repressed homosexuality as the underlying mechanism, i.e., identification with mother, demand for virginity, the virgin mother, accusations of infidelity with male friends, etc. However, the patient gave evidence which to the author pointed to another more pertinent and basic mechanism as the underlying psychopathology. This evidence again was found in early fantasies not dissimilar to those found in the first case described. He told, in a confession, that for many years, despite her overt decorum, he had visualized his mother affectionately embracing and having sexual play with a younger man, not his father. In recalling these thoughts, he stated that they were absolutely insane because he had never seen his mother display affection toward any man, including his own father, brother, or himself. During his adolescence, these thoughts about his mother began to disturb him, and he states that he dismissed them from his mind. The daydream of this patient appeared to be corroborative evidence that he identified, not himself, but his wife with his mother. The patient was identified with his father. The delusion of jealousy in this instance is actually a wish that mother should be loose sexually and that she should have an affair with another man, the other man being, of course, the patient himself. So again, as we see so often in clinical practice, the fear is actually the wish. It is most significant in these cases that the mother in each instance was very reserved, modest, and restrictive in attitude. These fantasies betray the desire on the part of the son that she be otherwise, that the illicit and clandestine seduction of the son should proceed. In everyday life, the teasing by suspicion is based on a desire of the individual to have his mate free sexually with him. On the Oedipal level, it was a similar feeling toward mother. The depreciation of the unfaithful mate is always a concomitant feature of malignant jealousy. This degradation, as explained in 1912 by Freud again, serves to disguise the mother and at the same time to allow sexualization of her. Oedipal roots and guilt. Now the question of the extreme suffering and anxiety of the jealous patient must be answered. If the jealousy seems to fulfill a wish for sexual freedom with mother, why should patients become so disturbed about the infidelity? This cannot be answered with direct evidence at this time, but it was the writer's impression from the cases studied that the subjective symptoms are based on guilt feelings because of the incestuous wish. The fears accompanying jealousy, i.e., fear of breaking up the home, fear for the reputation of the family, fear of insanity and general physical breakdown, as is so often expressed, are most likely in the nature of castration fears because of the tabooed wish in the fantasy and delusion. So, we find in these instances that in the beginning the fantasy is most pleasureful, only later does a hypertrophied conscience demand its price and obfuscate the original gratification. Here the sensation must no longer be felt as pleasure, but as gloom and despair. This mechanism is well known in the economy of a neurosis. In the normal individual, the sensation can be retained as a pleasureful one. The writer is aware that the mechanism in jealousy propounded in this paper is restricted to a small number of situations and in no way is contradictory, nor does it replace the other mechanisms in jealousy and paranoia, which have been proved by overwhelming evidence. However, the author feels that in the cases he has studied, neither the projective nor the homosexual mechanism was substantiated by adequate evidence. On further exploration, the direct ramifications of the Oedipal conflict itself were found to be the factors underlying the disturbance. In this, the parent of the opposite sex is the love object, and jealousy in a distorted way betrays and fulfills the wish. Clinically, the jealous person resists reassurance. On the contrary, he comes to therapy for substantiation of his fantasy. He will not easily give up the gratification inherent in the mechanism of jealousy. Summary and clinical implications. Aspects of the hidden wish fulfillment in the mechanism of jealousy are elucidated using the psychopathology of everyday life, interpretations of two pertinent plays, The Guardsman by Molnar and Amphitryon 38 by Giraudoux, and two clinical case reports. In these instances, jealousy of one's mate was found to be based on a manufactured family romance in which the Oedipal wish is circuitously expressed and gratified.